This is $250. It's about the average amount of money that the average person invests in the stock market every single month. Yet this is the amount of money that the most elite investors in the world invest every single month. So in this video, I'm going to be going through the levels of investors, their milestones, their strategies, their lifestyles, and compare and contrast them all along the way. Now let's start off with level 1. So hi there, I'm Jack. At level 1, I make roughly $55,000 a year, which isn't like a lot of money, but it's enough for me to get by and invest about $250 per month. I don't live in a high-cost state like California or New York, but where I live isn't exactly super cheap either. At this level, I'm most likely a customer support rep or a warehouse manager, maybe a substitute teacher that gets a lot of work. After taxes, I make roughly $3,300 per month. My rent plus utilities is $1,250. Now, with that rent, I do live in a very small apartment, a little under 500 square feet. I try my best to save money, but when I see a used Nintendo Switch for sale in my local area, I just gotta go buy it. I live a fairly normal life. I have a very old used car with 180,000 miles on it. And one of the very great strategies that I use is I max out my Roth IRA every single year. However, I don't really care too much about finance. I just invest in the stock market by $250 a month. I might be using an app for this that does it automatically. And pretty much this money just goes directly into index funds. In fact, I don't really know the names of any other index funds apart from SPY and VTI. I don't know what those are. I don't really check the market that much either, so I don't know what my portfolio value is on any given day. And if I were to keep investing at this level, $250 per month with a real return of 7% or so, I think that's what my tax guy says. After 5 years, I'll put in $15,000 total into the stock market, and I'll come out with $18,800 of a portfolio. Hey, that's like almost $4,000 for doing nothing. That's awesome. I should just keep doing this because after 35 years, I would put in $105,000 into the market, and he says it'd be worth $540,000. Closing in on $500,000 for really doing nothing. And when you actually do the math on that, that's almost 10 years' salary just for putting away $250 a month. Now at this level, I'm just hoping that I don't lose my job, that I won't have to dip into my investment account, and that hopefully I can eventually retire at some point. But all in all, I'm just a casual investor. So now for level 2. Hi, I'm Jack. I'm an engineer or maybe a doctor. I make about $200,000 to $300,000 per year, which is a really great living. My take-home pay after taxes and after maxing out my 401k, it's roughly $12,000 to $13,000. Now, I own a house. My mortgage is $2,800 per month. And, I like to enjoy life a little bit. I spend about $3,000 a month on things like travel and eating out. We're trying to have a kid, and on just some other expenses that I don't really think about that much. I also have a few $1,000s going to some bigger expenses as well. We got insurance and car payments, but again, I don't really think about those. What's great though is that I have a paid off Tesla. I know. Now, even though I am most likely a doctor, I do have a little bit of an interest in the stock market. In fact, I've been investing for well over a decade, and I like to have a diversified portfolio. However, not too diversified, because roughly 70% of my portfolio is still very broad or very big companies. So even though I do have some big index funds like SPY and VTI, I also have about 20% of my portfolio invested heavily into just a few companies like Tesla or Netflix or Google, Microsoft, some of the big guys, Nvidia. I also save a small portion of my portfolio, about 10% goes into alternatives, and these are things like gold or silver, crypto. And yes, I did buy GameStop. Now I do follow the markets, and I do use leverage or margin when I do see an opportunity, meaning I borrow money to invest in the stock market sometimes. For example, in 2020, when the oil prices were tanking all around the world, that's right, 3x leverage, baby. Made quite a lot of money there. Now, my average investment per month in the stock market is roughly $3,000. Because I'm a little bit more experienced, I'm getting nearly a 7.5% to potentially an 8% return on any given year. I very slightly beat the market. but not by much. Now, after 5 years of investing, which I've already been doing, I've put in $180,000 directly into my portfolio, but my portfolio value after 5 years is worth 260 grand. And if I were to keep doing this for 20 years, because let's face it, I'm not gonna work forever. I want to retire when I'm 55 instead of 65. So after 20 years, I would have put in $720,000 into this portfolio, and it would be worth $4.5 million. So after 20 years, that's nearly $3.8 million in net gain of my portfolio. In fact, you want to know something a little bit crazy here? Is that amount of value that I gained from the stock market is almost as much money as I gained from my salary of being a doctor. So after 20 years, I'll retire. I'll probably have a very nice cottage in Lake Tahoe or near the Rocky Mountains somewhere, and maybe put the rest away for my kids so that they don't really have to live a difficult life. But now we're on to the next level, level 3. This is the start of the Big Boy Pants Club. So hi, my name's Jack. I'm an executive at a fairly large tech company. I'm fairly important at this company, so I make roughly $1.5 million per year after salary and bonuses. Now, I invest roughly $20,000 per month, but it doesn't all go to the stock market. You see, roughly half of that will go into the stock market, and yes, just general index funds, maybe some bonds, and some companies that I may have a little bit of information about that they may be performing better than the public thinks. Now, roughly 25% of my portfolio goes into angel investing. So pretty much I'm the guy that I invest in the early stages of companies like Uber and SpaceX and Ripple and Shopify. Lots of companies, when they need money, when they are just working out of their garage, I'm the guy that does it. I put about 20% of my money into other funds as well. These could be venture capital funds, these could be private equity, hedge funds. I just give my money to someone else and say, hey, you take care of it. I don't want to think about it. And then 5% of this money, I consider it my casino fund. So this money will go into crypto or meme stocks or a heavy leveraged bet about something that I think is going to pop off really well. Now, currently my life is pretty great. I mean, I own a $4 million house. Look at that. Not bad. Now, I do also, I know that people don't like to hear this, but I also own a couple other small places in Aspen and Miami. I know. But they're very modest. They're just, very small penthouses. My kids, they go to private school. I don't really see them too much, but I heard the private school is pretty good. I donate money every now and again. I mean, my local school has a building named after me, so that's also nice. And guess what? I still fly commercial. Now it's maybe business class, but it's still commercial. But now, mathematically, I put away $20,000 into my investment portfolio every single month, and I know exactly how much money that's worth now. So I've only been doing this for 5 years. I've had a 9% return because some of my private deals and insider deals have gone pretty well so far. But after 5 years, I've put in $1.2 million, and now that is worth $2.3 million. And in roughly 20 years or so, I would have put away about $4.5 million. But yet, my portfolio will be worth roughly 85 mil. So when you think about it, the vast majority of my net worth after a couple decades won't even come from working at my $1 million job. It'll come from putting money away in my investment account. What will I do with this money? I don't know. Maybe build a dynasty. I'm not quite sure. I've always wanted a yacht, so maybe we'll do that. But now we're on to the next level, and this is level 4. So hi, I'm Jack, but I'm also a professional athlete or a very famous musician, and not just a normal one. We're talking the highest tier musician or highest tier athlete in the world. I make roughly $50 million a year, but to be honest, I've lost track at this point. I mean, money isn't exactly an object to me right now. I own roughly 8 properties around the world. I have a Gulfstream G800 on order right now, actually, because my G700, it just isn't working anymore. Now, I have a staff of people as well, about 40 people on my payroll, and these are people like tax people, pilots, chefs, housekeepers, and so on. See, at this level, I don't really invest in the stock market that much anymore because I'm actually a partner at an investment firm, Sequoia Capital. About half of the amount of money that I invest goes into Sequoia Capital, and all they do is, well, they make investments ranging from large ones of established companies to small seed ones from companies that you may have heard of. Airbnb, Google, Stripe, Apple. Have you heard of any of these? That's Sequoia Capital. Now, about a quarter of my money goes into, I guess, the traditional stock market, stocks. However, I invest quite a bit in bonds these days as I want some sort of safety with my money because, you never know what's going to happen with the market. I don't want to run out of my multi-millions of dollars anytime soon, so I like to put away some just for a little bit of safety. Now, I've also written a litany of $200,000 checks. Think of it as like I have my own personal Shark Tank investment portfolio as well, giving a lot of small businesses the chance to become medium-sized businesses by giving them a few $100,000 each. I think some of them have panned out well. I mean, one of them became, a $50 million company, which is okay, I guess. But all in all, I put away $200K a month with an 11% return on average over the last 10 years or so. So, what's my net worth? Well, I put in $24 million over the last 10 years, and currently my net worth is around $320 million. Now, at this pace, in another 10 years, if I were to reinvest and have a return just like this, I might have a $5 billion portfolio after just 20 years of investing. Now, this would make me one of the richest people in the world, and it's something I aim for. But now we are at the final level, the final boss of investing. So hi, my name's Jack, and I am one of the biggest investors in the entire world. I make, depending on the year, depending on my bonus, potentially $1 billion a year, but, usually around 500 million. I own a bunch of homes around the world. I'm trying to build a really big mega yacht, because I heard that Saudi guy was building a really big one, and I gotta have a bigger one. Now, I have multiple private jets. My direct payroll of people that just, fund my life, not my companies, got around 150 people right now. Now, because I'm a finance nerd and I really love investing, it's the passion, it's the thing that has helped me become the wealthy man I am. I invest roughly $10 million a month and have been doing so for well over a decade. But my investment firm is actually much larger than just me. I get investors investing in my company from all over the world. Some of the biggest, most powerful, and richest people on the planet, I handle their money. So at my company, depending on the day though, we'll take out $1 billion loan. We'll make a $10 million investment in a company in their third round of raising money. I think we gave out a $400,000 check to some teenagers in California a few weeks ago. I'm not sure. However, at my investment firm, about 1/3 of all money that comes in is invested directly into public companies or the stock market. So why do I do that? Well, that's because I may have some friends that I talk to quite often that are very bullish on certain industries. Now, I would never admit to this publicly or anything, and it's not like I've directly been reading the finances of these companies, but I do have some good vibes coming from some of my friends. Roughly a quarter of the money of my portfolio, though, does go into things like bonds, because, well, again, you gotta be safe. And then roughly half of the rest of my portfolio is locked up in things like real estate, private equity deals, angel funds. We even have enough money reserved to do corporate mergers and takeovers. So even though I invest $10 million a month of my own money into this, I'm already a multi-billionaire. That's because a few of my investments have already become unicorn companies. For example, do you know that I own just under 1% of Tesla? Pretty cool, I know. And at this point, the compounding is so crazy that we're talking I will jump from a $10 billion or $20 billion net worth on any given day to probably hundreds of billions of dollars at this given rate in roughly the next decade or two. If you don't believe me, just look at what's happened to every other person on the top 100 richest people in the world list. The richest person in the world not too long ago was worth $50 billion, now hundreds of billions of dollars. And well, I will be joining that list quite soon. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please click on my playlist with tons of other videos just like this on there and coming soon. So click on that and I'll see you guys in my next video in just a few seconds.